We thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for bringing each and every one here today, Lord. We ask that you place a hedge of protection on each one here today, Lord, as they return home, Lord. Lord, we ask that the decisions and discussions made today, Lord, are for the betterment of the people, Lord. Lord, guide us, direct us, and lead us. And we thank you for everyone here. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
All right, Shelley, roll call.
Yes, sir. Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Joe Deere. Keith Austin. Here. Danny Callison. Here. Julia Coates. Here. Sean Crittenden. Here. Mike Dobbins. Here. Rex Jordan. Here. Johnny Kidwell. Here. Darrell Legg. Here. Wes Snowfire. Here. Dora Katzkowski. Here. Joshua Sam. Here. Melvina Shotpouch. E.O. Smith. Here. Condessa Teehee. Victoria Vasquez. We have a quorum.
Awesome. Okay, if everybody has had a chance to look at the minutes, could I have a motion? All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, it carries. All right, first off, from the Marshal Service, Shannon Buell.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Shannon.
Besides my usual monthly report, I'd like to let everyone know that, can you hear me? Okay. Besides my normal monthly report, I'd like to let everybody know that our 6 officers that we hired Post-McGirt that I sent to the Federal Academy all have graduated. 2 of the 6 are here today. The other ones are doing other things. So you have Deputy Marshal Partney, so raise his hand, and Deputy Marshal Fisher. They just started as marshals, so please.
Go ahead and step out a little bit.
Come on
toward
out
you.
here.
We can't see you.
Name and badge number.
I just wanted you all to see what we're doing to increase. Next month, I'll try to have a couple more, but they're doing other things. I pulled one out of training day to come over here to at least say hi, so he has to get back to training. But I'm very fortunate to be able to lead men and women at my organization that are the best in the business. Absolutely. When they go to the academy, the instructors at FLETC always rave on Cherokee Marshals and the quality of applicant and the quality of cadet that we send them. I would be very disappointed if any of my officers ever were in the bottom part of any graduating class. Usually they're in the top. And so I just wanted to actually let you at least get some eyes on a couple today. And thank you, gentlemen.
Glad to have you all here.
One of the things we do that's not the norm, I think, for marshals is my 2 conservation officers, they help do other things other than enforce law. One of the things they've done is they've started helping the youth shoot, the youth hunts that we have on our property, and the veteran hunts. Both of those went off without any issues, and it was a huge success. And I believe part of that goes to Farron Pritchett, one of the deputy marshals for me, and Mike Reese. Both of them are very motivated to help their community. Farron Pritchett is a Cherokee speaker. And it's good to sometimes when you can take off the normal marshal hat and do something fun, something that makes you laugh, something that makes your community enjoy it. Most of the time when we get called someplace or we have to do our job, it's not for the best of reasons. And there's usually not a lot of laughing and joy and glad handing that comes along with it. So thank you very much for this council giving us the opportunity to show some kids some Cherokee ways on hunting, and we will be doing some fishing stuff as well. And I think it's good to see marshals outside of their normal day-to-day activities, so we're always looking for those things. Also, our emergency management has been very busy. Everything from the Tailhope and Chewy storm safe shelter bids. We're trying to get storm shelters in those 2 communities. So my EM staff are working very hard to get those federal grants, the monies, the bids, and the stuff like that to get those shelters. Other than that, it's the normal stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis at the Marshal Service. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Anybody have questions for Thank you for joining us today, Marshal Buell. I see that there are 81 cases that are listed there in the monthly report for September 2021. And I wanted to ask if the Marshal Service does a breakdown on the types of cases, i.e. are they juvenile, violent offenders, DUI, domestic violence, et cetera?
Yes, we break down by case. We also break down by area. So one of the things we want to look at is, are we having a rash of cases, let's say, in the Chewy area? And what are those cases? So we're always looking at more analysis of the caseload that we have. One of the issues with Post-McGirt is now my area to be concerned with is much bigger. One of the secondary issues to that is now there's other agencies that quite frankly don't report to me or my office that are running cases in Indian Country as well. One of the things we do is if, let's take Tahlequah PD. If Tahlequah PD goes on a, let's say, a burglary call, and that burglary call has an Indian involved, victim or suspect, and they don't write a report or make an arrest, then we never see that as the tribe. So myself, nor the AG's office sees that contact with the community. We're looking at ways right now to see about how do we capture that contact, but the problem is that's a totally different entity out there that reports to a total different chain of command. So that's one issue that we're looking at addressing. The second one is, let's say there is an arrest or a criminal case that's developed out of that. So that criminal case or that arrest report would then be sent to the Attorney General's office for prosecution. Now, the AG's office would decide at that time, do they go for prosecution or do they decline the case, depending on the makeup of the case. But those cases that would go straight to the AG's office, the Marshal Service doesn't get those either. So we're trying to integrate constantly with other departments like the Marshal Service and the AG's office to try to fill those voids that we think we're going to have. So now, when I look at trends, when I look at issues in our communities, sometimes it's going to be disingenuous because I can only see our trends and what I'm doing. I can't see what the trends are, let's say, in Tahlequah. I can't see Adair County's trends in their communities. Maybe they do have a higher level of domestic violence in Area A and a higher burglary rate in Area B or whatever. I can't see that yet. And I can't tell this body when I'll be able to or if I'll be able to. I can assure this body that I'm looking at that and we're wanting to address that because I think that is a gap that we at the Cherokee Nation has. And I don't like gaps, and if we can do what we can to fill those gaps. Some of it is truly programming. It's Tahlequah uses one data collection system. Bartlesville uses a completely different data collection system. So there's not one system statewide that every agency uses, first of all. So now how do I get all those systems to talk? That's an IT question that I do not have the experience to do. So we're slowly moving in that direction of how I can analyze what's going on in our reservation. So it's important to me. I truly think it's important to the council. It's probably important to the people that you represent in your communities. And so we're striving really, really fast to try to get some hands around that, if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. And I was about to ask about reporting and the reporting of arrests and criminal cases as well. So thank you for letting me know that that goes directly to the AG. So I have another question, and that question is, do your officers have specific training on domestic violence and domestic violence intervention?
Absolutely. There's always a running debate in Oklahoma about CLEAT, the Council of Law Enforcement Education and Training for the state of Oklahoma, and their training academy and the hours that they have to attend and the classes that they go through. One of the reasons why we promote FLETC, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Artesia, New Mexico for the BIA, is the quality and the hours of training that our officers get. they specifically address domestic violence in the academy. Not only that, the Marshall administration before me, and I want to give credit to where credit is due, that was Sharon Wright. She pretty much orchestrated in eastern Oklahoma for Indian country the documents that we use for domestic violence, the lethality assessments, the strangulation assessments, the stuff that we can use as tools. She pretty much pioneered that for Indian country over here. So I never want to take something from her that she did masterfully. How's that? She did. My only credit is, like I said before, that I kept it going, and it's good, but I didn't design it. I didn't make it. Sharon worked along with the BIA, FBI to look at these things and look at these topics, make sure that our officer on the street can accurately identify what's going on and accurately do something about it if we can. Domestic violence, if you listen to the chief this week, I absolutely agree with him. It is a scourge on this tribe. It's a scourge on this nation. Oklahoma has one of the reputations of being one of the highest in domestic violence rates in the U.S. That's disgusting in my opinion. We all, and I definitely am committed to addressing domestic violence when we can. If I can arrest on a domestic violence charge, absolutely, we will. We will investigate it, we will pursue it. I can tell you unequivocally, since McGirt, I have seen domestic violence cases in front of the AG's office that we've gotten bonds on bond schedules that's higher than I've ever seen in the history of this region for suspects on domestic violence charges. I'm an outside entity to the AG's office. I can see this. I see the bonds when we arrest a person on domestic violence or a counterpart agency does. And you can see the bond schedules, whether it's a state bond or it's a tribal bond. And quite frankly, the AG's office is, in my opinion, number one on getting good bonds set so we keep offenders where they need to be. So those are one of the many things that me and the AG's office have always done here at the tribe, is try our best to protect our people. And it's when we fail to protect our people that keep me up at night. So we will always strive, we will always ask for suggestions. If anybody in this room or any tribal member has an opinion or a better way to deal with what we're dealing with as a tribe, please let us know. I'm humble enough that I will listen to anything. I will try anything that's reasonable to protect our people that's out in our communities. So,
Well, I really appreciate that commitment and that dedication from the Marshal Service to domestic violence prevention and intervention and arrests as well. So to clarify, currently, the Cherokee Nation Marshal Service is performing lethality assessments where they are called into situations with domestic violence.
yes, we are. And we've always been motivated, even if we're not the primary responding entity. Let's say Tahlequah PD gets a call of domestic violence and my officer's driving through that community when that call comes out. We respond with Tahlequah. We might not be the primary entity at that call. Even if we're not the primary entity, we still hand out the lethality paperwork. We hand out resources for that victim where they can find. The reason why, in my opinion, the reason why One Fire was established was to help the Marshal Service at 2 a.m. when that victim has needs, concerns, and desires, to give us a resource out there besides a quarter and a phone call, that here's people that can help you with your issue. And I believe that was originally the thought of One Fire. I think continues to be that. And I'm very excited about what One Fire can bring to the table to help us. I would love to be able to say that I think in my tenure here that we can rid the Cherokee Nation of domestic violence. I can't sit up here and say that. People will still be people. I can say that we will strive without question to handle domestic violence cases as soon as we get them and try to get the best response from the justice system for those victims. That will be a charge that I was given, quite frankly, by the previous marshal that was here, and I took up when I became marshal 10 years ago. And I will, when I'm done here, I will give that charge to the next marshal. There's things that we have to do as a tribe. We have to protect our victims. We have to protect our elderly. Some of the most horrific things I've seen in the 21 years here is what we do to our elderly. It's disgusting. So we're motivated about protecting normal victims, elderly, and children. Now, granted, we also care about if you get your car stolen. I can tell you, my staff and me stay up at night trying to find ways to protect our youth, our children, our women, our victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, any of those physical acts upon another person. That's why I'm here. I'm not here to write speeding tickets. How's that? That's not what we do at the Marshal Service. We're here to hunt down really, really bad men and women that want to do bad things to our members. That's why I'm here.
Thank you very much, Marshal Buell. That concludes my questions.
Councilman Callison?
Marshal Buell, I have a couple of questions. One, is there any plans for having another division or a part of division in the northern part of the reservation? I know there's talk of 2 courtrooms in Rogers County to maybe help spread things out. Is there anything about maybe having a station or something up on the northern end of the reservation?
We've looked at that several times. One is in coordination with that Claremore court system to have more marshals there. What marshals do on a daily basis is we give them a vehicle and they will go to work, what we consider what's called 10-8. That's when you start your day at work. They start at their driveway. So they start their day at their driveway. They don't have to come to our office. All of them have computers, they have Wi-Fi, they have the way to send reports, do reports, so they don't have to come down to Tahlequah. What we found is with the 6 that we have and 2 still in human resources and background, that puts me at 44 officers total. I have 7 in investigations. Literally all they do every day is write reports, meet with the Attorney General's office, meet with the U.S. Attorney General's office in Tulsa, Muskogee, and work high-level cases in the Fed. That's what my investigators do. They're very busy. They have caseloads that would astound people in the cases that they're running. So that leaves 31 or so patrol people. If you get my evidence and property custodian is a marshal for court reasons. So he handles all the property, all the evidence, anything that has to go to either FBI, blood stains, all that. He handles all of that. So you get down to around 31 marshals in uniform, like you just saw, out on the street, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That doesn't give me a lot of people. So we will probably have a satellite office around Claremore. It won't be staffed 24/7. It just can't. I can't staff my office 24/7. On a day-to-day basis, you might have me or Scott, Craig, or Mike Roach in the office, or you might have other people coming in doing things, but we don't have a dedicated marshal that even sits at our office to answer calls over here at the complex. It's just whoever's closest to that call gets it. Now, I can't tell you where we'll be, let's say in 2 years, if we increase numbers. Once I get to a certain number, then we will actually look at splitting the agency and having a north agency and a south agency. But with that, it's better to have investigators that concentrate in one federal district. So right now, my investigators are having to concentrate in northern and eastern U.S. federal districts. Well, those districts are totally different. They might as well be 2 different states in the Fed court. The AUSAs want stuff different in Tulsa than they do in Muskogee. The judges want stuff that are different in Tulsa than they do in Muskogee. So right now, my investigators are juggling cases going, okay, this case is having to go to Muskogee. This is what I have to do. or this case is going to Tulsa, and these are things I have to do. So it's a constant juggle on which jurisdiction they're going to be presenting cases. One of my goals is, once we get the manning where we need it to be, is to split that investigation. So now I have a northern investigation division, and all they care about is the northern federal court. I'll have a southern district that will only care about the eastern federal court. So that's goals that we have. But at this juncture, with 44 total on the ground, I don't foresee 2 total separate agencies.
And I think you answered it. The second question, do we have marshals on duty 7 days a week?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Is there a certain number you have every day, or you just?
It varies. It varies widely now because of court. Before, we didn't have court transports. You know, we had a couple of courts a month, and that was it. I think this last month, we did 78 transports. So you can only transport so many people on a Tuesday for court. We bought 2 buses that can, I think it's 6 or 8 passenger detention buses that we have, so we can run those in a loop around. But some of the things we're having to do now that we didn't have to do pre-McGirt is drive to Nowata, pick up a inmate in Nowata and drive them down here to court, or go to Muskogee, drive that inmate here for court. Those are taking resources that, quite frankly, we don't have. You know, if let's say I have to get 20 inmates here on Tuesday at 1 o'clock, that's going to take a fourth of my agency to be on Tuesdays, plus gas, plus transports to get those inmates here. Then to wait for the court to go through, and then drive them back to their respective jails. So that is taking a lot of our day-to-day activities, is really now switched to how do we manage this court animal that the tribe actually has now. So does that?
Yeah, that pretty much does.
Okay.
Where do we keep these prisoners anyway? Do we actually have a Cherokee facility, a jailhouse that we keep them in?
We do not. So we contract with state entities. So we have jail contracts with, I believe, 12 of the 14 counties that we operate in. And so we pay a jail fee. It's an amount per inmate per day, and that varies on the jail. And it also varies on what they get. You know, there's some jails out there that have educational services for inmates. One of the things we did today was have to move long-term inmates. So now that we're starting to have court, now that we're having jury trials, now the Cherokee Nation is going to start holding prisoners for longer periods of time. So let's say now you get incarcerated for, let's say, 4 years, 3 years, whatever. Now I'm going to have to find facilities that normally would never keep an inmate past a year. Now we're having to move those inmates to facilities that hold past that year. So it's constantly a shell game for adults. Now juveniles is an entirely different animal. There's very few juvenile beds in our area, in Oklahoma. And those beds are pretty much all taken up by OJA. So Oklahoma Juvenile Authority went out and pre-purchased all these beds in all these juvenile facilities, whether they have a juvenile in the bed or not. They own the bed now. So there might be a juvenile facility, let's say in Veneta, that they have 12 beds open, but we can't put a juvenile in them because OJA has already bought those beds up. OJA was going to release a lot of their beds post-McGirt because they're not going to have as many Oklahoma juveniles incarcerated as they did before. I can't tell you who put a stop to that, but at some juncture, OJA did not release those beds, and those beds are still under contract by OJA that we can't use. So an example is we have a juvenile incarcerated right now in a location that we pay for every day, but that's the only bed I have in that location, and this person's not getting out of this location anytime soon. So there's my bed space, only one available in this entire facility. It's taken up by one juvenile, and we won't ever be able to put another juvenile in there until this juvenile ages out. So those are very serious concerns that we have at the Cherokee Nation, is One, can we find facilities for juveniles and adults, but mainly our issues right now are with juveniles. Can we find them? And also, second question that needs to be asked, are these appropriate places to hold our juveniles? You know, is it quality? Is it good? Is it safe? These are questions that we have to ask ourselves when we go into any negotiations with any facility, whether it's an adult facility or a juvenile facility. So not only are now we finding bed spaces for adults and juveniles, but we now having to not be the watch over for that facility, but we have to know what's going on in that facility, because you will get calls. I promise you, I've answered calls from people in this room that said, hey, I had a family member of this person that's incarcerated in said jail. That person says that they're not being treated right. So what that phone call, when I hang up with you, I immediately call my investigation staff to open an investigation and go look at that facility. Well, that just doesn't take a 5-minute phone call. Those are calls, and they need to be handled appropriately. So all these phone calls that we get, I have to put a live body on that phone call to get resolution that I like. You know, whether it's, yes, they're abusing inmates and let's get them out and do the stuff we need to do, or no, they're not. I have to have an answer now, if that makes sense. So all these calls, I know you all get calls of fraud, whatever makeup that is, and you can call me. I assign the same investigator to go out and look at that fraud case. And that fraud case might take 5 minutes and, oh, everything's fine, or it might take 2 years on some financial crime frauds. So it just depends on that case. Does that help? Okay.
Just an observation on our 2 hunts we had. The marshals made a big difference down there. They, especially on the youth hunt, they really made good contact with the kids. I think it was time well spent, and appreciate them coming down.
Thank you.
Shannon, I know you kind of just brought out there you'd be open the doors to any kind of spitball idea or something to help out with ease of all the things that y'all are going through since McGirt. One of the things that I've always had in my mind of looking out, and especially since it's a major problematic look when you deal with domestic abuse, homelessness, which is on the rise since McGirt, a lot of the problems stem out of having simply some form of drug relations to that. Saying that, there are a lot of federal national security defense contractors out there that have been used, like over in Afghanistan, to eradicate the opioid poppy seeds that were being grown out there. The funds are here with Cherokee Nation. Have we looked, or have you looked at, or possibly could you look at going, what it would take to temporarily hire those agencies to come in here and eradicate the drug problem in connection with the Marshals and the FBI? I know that a lot of them probably already are dual deputized with the FBI currently, so that way we could immediately go in there and start handling that problem, which is affecting everybody. I mean, you go through Tahlequah, and it's just, there's a homeless person, same way in Tulsa, Oklahoma City. And all of that stems back to some form of drug addiction or drug problem that's been allowed to just kind of seep into the area. So I didn't know if that's something you looked at, or could you look at?
Wes, I have not looked at contracting for that, and that would be something that I would definitely look into. So thank you for that. Okay. One of the things that I've seen 21 years here, working in areas that are high-level drug areas. That's eastern Oklahoma. Historically, that's what it is. A lot of the issues that we've had over the years is due to the state legislature and the laws that they pass. You know, before, we could do a lot more with a lot less as far as drug issues. Let's say I stop you and you had heroin in the car. Well, the levels that you had to have in your car were far reduced that I could do something about than today. And that's the state legislature did this.
Right.
So a lot of the stuff that were felonies before, literally, that we had teams to go out and deal with this, have now become either misdemeanor or owner-user quality levels.
Right.
And it's, I'll just be frank, it's hard for me to put an officer in danger and that officer had to point a gun at somebody, and somebody pointed a gun at that officer for something that, let's take marijuana, for
Right.
something that's legal in the state. Now I'm putting people, the most dangerous place a cop can be is in a domestic violence issue.
Right.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, right behind that is anything dealing with dope and
Right.
drugs. I'm not an Oklahoma legislator here. I don't know the reason why they did what they did to do this, but it has drastically affected any state law enforcement officer on how they can deal with drug activity.
Right.
And anytime you hamper that officer from officer discretion, that
Right.
doesn't mean that you stop a car and there's a joint in the car and you put this person in jail for 5 years. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But we should have the ability to go a step further to find out where this was. And you can't do that. You can't do good, high-level drug investigations without that possibility of a stick to that person, if that makes sense. I have to give them a carrot and a stick. The carrot is, you get to go free tonight. The stick is, you go to jail tonight. Well, if there's no stick, it's hard to give the carrot.
Right.
So I would definitely look, when you meet with, agencies like FBI and DEA, they're dealing with those same issues that we're dealing with here. What a contractor's allowed to do other places, they just can't do here, but I'm not saying that that's not a good idea.
Right.
I think if we can get some pretty good advisory help and people on the ground to help that issue out.
Yeah.
I see the same thing you see, Wes, when I drive through Tahlequah. 10 years ago, I didn't see that population
Right.
in Tahlequah.
Right.
I think it was always here, it just wasn't in our face.
Right.
We see that daily now.
Yeah.
I haven't been to a place recently that I didn't see it, however.
Right.
Whether it's Tulsa, Oklahoma City, Dallas, used to, you'd go to places like Chicago, and yeah, of course I'm gonna see it. I don't see it in Tahlequah, I don't see it in
Right.
Pryor, I don't see it in Claremore. Well, now we're seeing it those places.
Yeah.
I think those are bigger questions than, quite frankly, a law enforcement officer can handle.
Yeah.
Those are systemic societal issues that as a society, as a group of people here together, living together, how do we as a group fix it? If people are just dependent on their law enforcement to fix it, it will never be fixed.
No, absolutely not.
So I would be very excited about meeting with people and talking to them about options that we could
Right.
have as a community, mental health and drug abuse.
Right.
Treatment centers, clinics to help them get off heroin and the stuff. Those are all important things that I would sure come to the table at. I don't know that I can add enough to that discussion, but I would definitely be at the table, so.
Well, reservations have become kind of a breeding ground for big organized crimes. You see on that out at the Navajo Indian Reservation, whenever medical marijuana got legalized there, went on for a couple of years where it was kind of this gray zone like we're seeing now, which is the tribal police trying to enforce and eradicate the drugs, and then there's this overlap with state law that's allowing them to grow medical marijuana, and that seems to be the same situation being set up here in our reservation. So, I know that a lot has to do with laws that get created, whether that be state or tribal, since we're in our reservation, and then also the carrying out mechanism through the state, through our tribal attorney general's office, and on to the justice system that we're now creating. I was just looking for maybe trying to help you guys out. If there's funds there that can go and hire these agencies to get it just starting to get cleaned up, because I know you guys are dealing with a lot with the transports and everything that's going on, so.
I will definitely look at that. Thank you for that information.
Appreciate it. All right. Appreciate it, Speaker.
Short, I promise. I very much appreciated the class that went to Artesia and just graduated last Friday. Greg Partain is from Claremore, and he was gracious enough to send me a link to their graduation ceremonies where I could watch it last Friday, and it was a real honor to watch them. And to see, we had several officers who were recognized as the top performing officers, and actually to witness the fact that there's a true emphasis that they are Indian country law in their graduation ceremony. that did my heart good to see how much emphasis was put on that in this ceremony. My only question or request is that next time we have a class graduate, would you inform all of us? Because I think all of us should have that opportunity to see that.
Quite frankly, I didn't know that it was going to be televised.
Well,
So-
it was a real treat to get to watch that.
Good. I will make sure I get that to everybody.
Thanks.
Just an observation. You know, the nation, because of McGirt, is now having to deal with a lot of things that virtually every city in the state has been dealing with for a long time. And when the law did change through an election process, they were, years ago, they talked about passing this bill about not incarcerating people and putting them in treatment centers. Well, on the back of that bill, then they made virtually every drug, as far as possession goes, a misdemeanor. Doesn't matter, heroin, cocaine, all of them are now misdemeanors if they're in your possession. Ticket, that's what you get. Used to, those were all felonies, arrestable, and it was a really kind of a big deal. You know, now you have to get somebody actually selling that stuff to make it a felony. They have to be selling it or delivering it, unlawful delivery. So society has changed a lot in the drug scene. And, you know, we have in Jay a treatment center, and yes, they are very, you got to have them. But then, you get people in there who don't really want help, and they'll last 1 week, 1 day. They might not even last a day. Well, now they come from across the state. They have nowhere to go, and they take up residence in your town. We have more homeless people than we've ever had before because they don't want to continue with their treatment, and they get out and they get hooked up in different places. And you wonder, how did you get here from the state of Kansas? Well, I came to your treatment center, but I didn't like it, so I quit. Got to have a place to live. So, these are the things that have happened. Yes, it's substance abuse, but people still have to make that decision that they want help. And if they don't, it's very hard to help those people. And as cops, when you deal with these guys, they know the law. And it's not like it used to be. The game has changed. And now that you guys are having to deal with everything an everyday cop has to deal with every day, it's going to change the game for you too.
Yes, it does.
And oh yeah, and we're not even getting into mental health and things like that. But gosh, Marshal Buell, I know it's been almost overwhelming. I understand that. And on the sad side, there's still places that are going to try to take advantage of us by gouging us, holding prisoners longer than they should. There's a lot of things they don't tell us that they have them. There's a lot of things that's going on. Even some places saying, hey, is this Indian or non-Indian? That's Indian. Well, we don't want them. They refuse them to take them. So there's still a lot of things that need to be worked out with the state and with the cities that would make our job easier. I hope at some point in time that those things can be worked out. But my heart's out there with you guys, and just keep plugging. That's all I got to say. Okay, anybody else? All right, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next from the Office of the Attorney General, we have Sarah Hill.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Sarah.
So, first of all, I wanted to address Domestic Violence Awareness Month. The Cherokee Nation observed Domestic Violence Awareness Month, which makes this a good time, I think, to highlight the work of One Fire, which is part of the Attorney General's office. One Fire served 600 clients in 2021, just to date, just to this point. 224 of those victims came to One Fire as a result of the Hogner decision. 558 received some kind of financial services, such as rent, utilities, motel expenses, food, fuel, etc. 582 received support services, such as court notifications, court assistance, civil protective order assistance, or referrals to other services that they might need. I want to thank Speaker Shambaugh, Councilman Smith, and Councilwoman Teehee, who were able to attend the signing of Chief Hoskins' proclamation of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. I know that kind of support encourages our One Fire victim advocates in their work, which is as difficult as it is important. They really have to bear a lot of mental burden themselves as they reach out to help these women who are often in difficult situations, and I know that that's important to them. And that show of solidarity with One Fire is much appreciated, especially with the briefs in the Supreme Court attacking the nation and the work that it does. But I know that everyone on this council, whether you were able to make it that day or whether you couldn't, I know that all of you support our victims and the work that One Fire does, and so we very much appreciate your continued support. Chief Hoskin also set up a task force to reduce domestic violence and improve the nation's response to those crimes. This task force is focused on protection of victims and includes the First Lady, Shauna Baker from the Cherokee Nation Supreme Court, and Counselor Teehee, along with several other officials from the executive branch. We observe Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but our commitment goes beyond October, and it really continues into every month. So thank you, Councilwoman Teehee, for committing your time to improving the Cherokee Nation's response to domestic violence. Secondly, I wanted to give you an update on tribal court cases and processes, which I do every month. During my last report, we had filed 2,000 new criminal cases. Today, that number exceeds 2,300. We have also received 300 referrals for juvenile offenses, up from 216 referrals that I reported on September 30th since the decision in Hogner. The nation now has 8 employees in our Juvenile Justice Division, and the Office of the Attorney General's website has been updated to provide information to the public about their work. Patty Buell, the Director of Juvenile Justice, was featured on a panel during the Oklahoma Supreme Court's recent Sovereignty Symposium and impressed everyone who attended, I think, with her depth of knowledge and her professionalism. The AG's office has a new attorney starting on Monday, which we are always happy to see, and we plan to hire additional attorneys and other critical support staff in the coming weeks. That gives the nation now 8 full-time prosecutors. The AG's office has added Owasso and Bernice to our list of municipalities with a MOA. There are 10 municipalities now that have entered agreements. And as you might recall, these agreements allow citizens to pay tickets at the local court clerk and allows the cities to keep nearly all of the revenue from those tickets. And that supports local law enforcement. So they write the tickets, and then that local community is able to keep the lion's share of the money from that ticket. This is just one of the many ways that we are working with local law enforcement to improve public safety and support local officers. Whether an officer works for a city, a county, the state, or the Cherokee Nation, we want to be sure that all of them have the tools that they need to successfully provide security for all Oklahoma citizens. And then finally, I wanted to talk about the Supreme Court cases. This is the longest section of my report this month. There's been a flood of misinformation and half-truths, et cetera, in the media since the amicus filings by the cities of Tulsa and Owasso and in a brief that was filed by the Oklahoma District Attorneys. Like Governor Stitt, these amicus briefs use pieces of information removed from their context to create a story that they hope will appeal to the Supreme Court. It didn't matter if the victims involved in the cases in their briefs ever asked to become part of a political hit job against Indian country, which they didn't. The adversaries of tribal sovereignty want Oklahomans to be afraid of tribal justice. They want them to feel like tribal prosecutors, tribal victim advocates, and tribal police don't care about victims of crime, and that our courts cannot or will not protect the public. And to make these arguments, they point often to the Tate case. For the Tate case, the state supporting amicus briefs make the same argument that Stitt has recently made, and which I'm sure many of you have seen. That if the Cherokee Nation had only prosecuted the case earlier, that this person may not have been free to commit murder. The city neglects to mention, as Stitt also always neglects to mention, that Tate had been released on bond on the same day of his initial misdemeanor domestic assault and battery offense in December of 2020. The brief states that absent McGirt, this serial abuser may have been behind bars and his victim may not have died. But the state itself never had the abuser behind bars when it did have jurisdiction, nor did it prosecute any of the previous cases that were filed when they had jurisdiction. Instead, one by one, they dismissed them all, even without McGirt. There's a lot of information the state supporting amicus briefs don't tell the public. This week, the Cherokee Nation had jury trials. Jurors came from across the reservation to hear cases and that's justice in action in Indian country. In one case, a domestic violence case, the defendant was sentenced to a 4-year sentence. He is headed to jail thanks to the hard work of the prosecutors, Tahlequah City Police, and NSU Campus Police, the court, and of course, the incredible courage of the victim, which is humbling. But nothing about that careful work or that courage is mentioned by the district attorneys or by the cities of Tulsa and Owasso in their amicus briefs. The Cherokee Nation will file its amicus brief in Castro Huerta this week, and in that brief, we'll respond comprehensively to the attacks levied by the district attorneys and the cities. It's my preference to limit my comments to the substance of the allegations to the amicus brief filed by the cities, to save the arguments for the amicus, which will be filed this week, so that the nation's written statement can stand for itself before the United States Supreme Court. These are historic times, times when the nation is being tested and where, as it was 200 years ago in Worcester v. Georgia, our nation is going to have to depend on the United States Supreme Court to hold the United States to its word. I appreciate the continued support of the Principal Chief and our council as we yet again defend our territory before the United States highest court. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the update, Attorney General Hill. I have a few questions. We heard today that there have been over 2,300 cases filed. My question is, how many cases are backlogged?
I don't know what you mean by backlogged exactly. So we are constantly receiving cases, new cases, cases that are being dismissed by the McGirt docket. So there's a constant flow of cases into and out of our office. So I know there's a certain number of them right now that are under review, but I don't have an exact number for you.
Okay, is your office able to provide a breakdown on the current, a breakdown on those cases that have been filed or cases that are waiting to be filed by case type, such as domestic violence, violent offenders, DUI, et cetera?
Yes. I mean, we have been in the process of uploading. I say this, when McGirt first occurred, of course, there were, from almost a year, they were waiting on a decision from McGirt. Many cases were being backlogged and were building up. And so we've been in the process of moving all of that information that we received in all of these different formats, paper files, digital files, loading them back into Prosecutor by Carpel, which is our system that we have now. So there are some cases that might still be in that upload process, but yes, we have those cases and we can provide that information.
Okay, what's the timetable on that information? On that information being provided?
Just if you want to submit a GRA request or a FOIA request, we'll be happy to respond.
Okay, how many of our cases are Indian on Indian, and how many involve non-Indian offenders perpetrating on an Indian?
The vast, vast majority of the cases are Indians who've committed crimes against Indians. There is a small group of cases, and they're all domestic violence cases, and I say small as a proportion of our total group, where a non-Indian has committed a crime against an Indian. That's the only circumstance under which we are able to bring charges in those circumstances.
How often has the Office of the AG brought cases against non-Indian offenders?
We've brought several. I don't have the number in front of me, but we have brought several against non-Indian offenders.
Okay. Marshal Buell stated that reports on arrests and criminal cases for our Cherokee Reservation law enforcement partner agencies come directly to the AG. Do these reporting requirements vary by cross-deputization agreement, or are they standardized across the agreements?
I wouldn't say they're standardized. So there are multiple different entities that we receive cases from very small towns like Porham to very large municipalities like Owasso and the city of Tulsa. And they come to us in different formats all the time.
Okay. On those reporting, on that reporting from these law enforcement partners, is that something that's done daily, weekly, monthly? And is that information that the AG shares with the Marshal Service?
So that information comes in, again, from all of these different agencies and all of these different formats. So there's not one standard, they all come in on Friday. That's not how it works. They come in all of the time.
Okay, and perhaps that terminology backlog was misleading, because I do understand that the state of Oklahoma did a fairly large case dump on Cherokee Nation. Would that be an accurate statement?
I think that is an accurate statement. I think that it's not a complete statement. So one of the things that, that we dealt with at that time period, it depends on when you're talking about this situation. So soon after Hogner was, before Hogner was even decided, then my attorneys were out at the local DA's offices saying, I need to know what cases you might have, or we've looked on OSCN and we know these names, these people are probably Indian, or defense attorneys contacted us and said that, hey, I have this case that involves an Indian. So at the very beginning, prior to Hogner, the AG's office was aggressively going out to the cities and to the counties trying to get this information ourselves so that we would be as prepared as we could be. Then after Hogner was decided, then we began to get more information from the different entities. Sometimes we got a lot of information just in a big dump. Sometimes we would get it, 15 cases here, 20 cases here. It was not the same ever from the different municipalities and from the different counties that had information for us. So did we receive a dump? Yeah, we received lots of different information dumps from various agencies, but it's not like they all got together and put them in alphabetical order and sent them all to us. That is definitely not what happened. It wasn't nearly that organized.
Okay, thank you for that. You mentioned that you currently have 8 prosecutors on staff full-time. Does this represent the totality of the prosecutorial, or are there also additional prosecutors who are on contract?
So we will have 8 on Monday. So that our number 8 starts Monday. So we have 7, and they're all full-time staff of the Cherokee Nation.
So after the 8 begin, that will be a total of 15, is that correct?
No, that'll be a total of 8. We have 7 now. We will have 8 on November.
Okay,
I think
all
it's
right.
November 1st.
Thank you for that clarification. Do any of these prosecutors have a specialization by specific case type?
They do. We do have a domestic violence unit that we have one prosecutor and then an investigator and support staff who work exclusively on domestic violence cases. Other than that, it's assigned out by our sort of chief prosecutor who oversees that division, and she takes the cases in and assigns them out.
Okay, thank you very much. So do you have domestic violence specialists on staff or on contract as prosecutors?
Yes, we have people that have decades of experience on domestic violence prosecuting these cases. My prosecutor who is doing this spent more than 20 years as a state judge, oversaw, thousands of cases involving domestic violence. Someone who's extremely experienced. When you talk about specialism in a specialist in an attorney sense, there's not. She doesn't have like a certificate that says I'm an expert in this, but she spent her entire career dealing with crimes and much of that career dealing with domestic violence. So it certainly is I have a very experienced person working on that.
Okay, that's wonderful. When did that DV unit start?
So we began this process right around the same time that we began talking about the executive order. So it's probably been a couple weeks now.
Okay, great. Is the AG's office able to prosecute domestic violence cases without victim testimony?
It can, under certain circumstances, so it depends on the nature of the case. So if it's a case where you go to the scene of the crime, and there's a lot of other evidence that makes it clear that the domestic violence occurred, if there's sufficient evidence for us to make a case, then we can prosecute it without the victim. There are other cases where it may not be possible to do that.
Okay, thank you for that. So with the domestic violence unit, do you have a plan to add more prosecutors and/or investigators?
We generally have a plan, even separate from the domestic violence issue, plans to hire more prosecutors. So we're getting ready to post another one now. And certainly, I can only see that division growing and becoming stronger as time goes on.
Does your office currently have a plan in place or a process or a system to reduce time delays on prosecutorial intervention in domestic violence charges?
We consider every charge that comes into our office extremely, quickly. So I don't know that we have a specific plan to change the way that we're doing that right now.
Okay, I don't want to refer to a specific case. I don't think that would probably be appropriate in this forum, but, okay. So, the total number of cases that were referred to Cherokee Nation, do you have that total number? That was, I kind of referred to it as a dump.
Well, again, it's not like they were referred to us per se. So there's a combination of cases that were referred to us where law enforcement said, here is this case, and we would like for you to look at it. And then there are cases where the Cherokee Nation went out and said, hey, these are our cases and we're going to file them. So I don't have a number of every case that our office has received to date right now. That would be a good subject for a GRA or a FOIA request if you're wanting specific numbers, because I just don't have that off the top of my head, Councilwoman.
Okay, thank you. I understand that post-McGirt things, it's a totally different world. Has your office considered bringing in consultation on individuals who have experience in criminal justice systems to assist in the vast expansion of Cherokee Nation courts post-McGirt?
I mean, the people that I have brought in are people that have vast knowledge of running criminal justice systems. Nearly every prosecutor that I have hired has got a lot of experience in criminal justice. So it's not as if, we went out and hired a lot of people who this was their very first criminal case. So I feel like I have a breadth of experience. Among the most experienced prosecutors in this region have come to work for the AG's office, which has been good and very helpful to us, and has been made possible by the fact that we pay significantly better than the state does. So there were a number of experienced, effective, battle-tested prosecutors who were able to come to the AG's office and immediately support the work that we were doing.
Okay, I really appreciate your willingness to speak with me through these issues, and you suggested a couple of different areas for GRA requests, and I will be submitting those and requesting that additional information. I would like to make a request, and that would be that oftentimes, as I'm trying to kind of, write down the information that you're providing to us, it occurs to me that it would be much easier for me to make notes if this were provided in a written format for us here on the council. Obviously, you're free to amend or change that as you wish when you appear before us, but I would like to request, especially on some of these numbers, over 2,300 cases today filed, a increase in the juvenile justice referrals for up to 300 from 216. I would like to request written reports if that might be a possibility.
Understood.
All right, thank you. That concludes my questions and comments. Appreciate it, Speaker.
Councilman Legg?
Yes, I just got two things. One, you said that somebody received a 4-year sentence. Would that be two 2-year sentences? Or is that, because we can only sentence up to 3 years, correct?
So there were multiple offenses involved.
Gotcha,
And so he
that's what I
actually
was-
received 2 years which we would, is the lingo that we use. He's got 2 years in, so he'll spend 2 years in prison, and then he'll have 2 additional years that he'll have to serve suspended.
Okay. And the other one, have we entered into any more MOUs with any other towns or cities or anything?
The most recent ones are Owasso and Bernice, but we haven't had any since then, although we have had additional inquiries. So I expect that we'll have another
Okay.
round next month.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I was wondering, a lot of the small communities, and I may have missed this down the road or something, but when they arrest citizens and they send them into the court systems here, is there any plans for a reimbursement to these cities and to their municipalities for the fines that they would have lost by sending them to the nation?
So if we're talking about municipalities, so cities, then
Yes.
there is a way to do that, and that's our MOA agreement. And under the MOA, if a city has issues a ticket for speeding, then they're able to retain, if they've entered into one of these MOAs, they're able to retain all of that fine except for, I think it's $30, which is retained by the nation. So there is a pathway to do that, and that's our municipal MOA. And we're happy to talk to any of the, Sequoia County really got on board quick. And we're happy to meet in person or have phone calls with any other municipalities that are interested in it, up to and including the city of Tulsa. I mean, it's open to any municipality.
Okay, my next question would be, I've had several, different law enforcement agencies. Do we, once we prosecute a defendant that's found guilty, do we follow up to that officer and let them know exactly what happened with their arrest or anything of that sort, or is that something that would be very difficult to do?
I mean, it's something that we've talked about doing, but it's not something that we've had the opportunity to implement yet. We just don't have the staff, we don't have the person power yet to fully implement that. But that is something that we have our eye on. The other thing that I think would be really helpful, will be very helpful, is when we have an online portal from the court where people can go in and look up these cases. Because Oklahomans are very spoiled by OSCN, which is a great tool. It makes it very easy to look up and see, how much do I owe, when's my court date? It's not the norm for across states. It's really a great asset that Oklahoma has. And so I know there are plans at the court to similarly put online tribal tickets, and then it would be easy enough for an officer to pull it up and say, okay, this person, this is what's going on in this person's case. So I think that might be a better long-term solution. And I know the court's been very busy implementing that, which is going to be no small task either. Just uploading information into those systems takes time. You're welcome.
Yeah, you said Owasso did an MOA, right?
I did.
Which I believe Owasso is actually the largest population community that's fully within the Cherokee Nation at this point, at pushing 40,000. It is ironic. This is more a statement than a question, but it's ironic that they signed the MOA and joined the amicus brief virtually at the same time.
I believe that I probably said that yesterday to someone. It's hard for me to understand, the dual mindset here. On the one hand, Owasso is very open to receiving, donations of money back to their law enforcement, and I think that everyone here is happy to provide that to them, because Owasso law enforcement officers are well-trained, they do a great job. We want them to maintain that level of service in that community. But at the same time, there's obviously people who would like to see the reservations destroyed, and that's a very difficult thing to understand.
Thank you.
Councilman Deere.
Hey, real quick, I might have missed it. You said all those cases. How many cases are they seeing a week right now?
When you say they, do you mean
Like
how
going
many?
through the court system, literally going through?
I mean, there are hundreds of cases on the docket every single week. Hundreds.
So like 200 or 800?
I mean, closer to 200 than 800.
That's what I was wondering. Okay, and then how many court clerks do you have right now? And how many do you need going forward?
Court clerks is a court function, so that
Right.
would be a question for Justice Bartow or for the Supreme Court, so I
Okay.
can't speak to that.
And prosecutors, you said you're going to have 8. How many are you looking forward to getting as a total?
I definitely need, I have open positions. I think I have 1 or 2 more open positions on my org chart. I think there's probably, every time I think we're getting close to having what we need, I feel differently about it, because and again, it's only been since March, since we've had this, so we're constantly getting a feel for what do the numbers look like. Now we're putting on about 100 cases a week.
Yeah.
And that, we need a lot more prosecutors to handle that. So I can't tell you what that number is. It is not 8.
Yeah, I didn't know if you knew your top end, because it's going to keep growing.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to keep adding prosecutors and then checking in with our staff and seeing where they're at, and we have these conversations every day about, where is the need on the support staff side? Because sometimes adding more support staff makes your attorneys more efficient and they can handle more because we've got more support staff handling that, is there another piece of software? Is it, if it was reported differently to us, would that make our jobs easier? Because so much of the time we're going back to OSCN. Do I have all the discovery from this, from the investigators? Am I missing a report? Can I get them to get it to me in a timely manner? There's a lot of still intergovernmental cooperation. And I think everyone is trying, but it's just going to take some time for us to get out a system that works. And I think the system will work better once Oklahoma accepts that this is how it's going to be. And then they really begin to put more of their effort into working out these issues and less of their effort into trying to find opportunities to say, oh, well, see, look what the tribes did. Look, and no, please don't look at anything we've done.
Right.
I'd like to quit playing that game with Oklahoma and really focus on solving our common problems.
Okay, can you email me a copy of the MOU and the amicus brief so I can?
That's all available on our website.
It's on the website now?
Yeah, the Attorney General's
Okay.
office has now the amicus brief is not up, because it hasn't been filed yet.
Right.
But when it is filed, we'll post it to the website, and every city agreement is posted to our website. We try to keep that updated with information we think that members of the public and members of this council would be interested in. On Councilwoman Teehey's suggestion, we may put a metrics box on there and just begin, publicly reporting out some of this information. So
Okay.
we're a work in progress,
All right,
but I
and
appreciate
Thanks for
the
coming
questions.
last night.
It was a pleasure to be there.
Quite entertaining, so. All right, thank you. That's all I got, Chair.
Anybody else? Wes?
Who is Christy Sherrow Newhoff?
I don't know Ms. Newhoff, but I understand that she is I know who she is. I have never met her. Ms. Newhoff is a Cherokee citizen. She's an attorney. I know she has had a role at the Cherokee Heritage Center and has had a lot of different, leadership roles as a community person. And that's what I know about Ms. Newhoff.
You don't know her experience with domestic violence?
I do not. I know that she's an attorney, and I know that she's got a long history of working as an attorney, but I don't know her personally. I've never met her.
Yeah, I tried to do some research on her myself, because she's supposed to be one leading this new task force that the chief created, and I seen that she was a medical attorney, so I was anticipating that there might have been some litigation coming from it, seeing as the doctor that this whole initiation arose from was a doctor at one of our healthcare facilities. Now, I know this domestic violence task force was created in light of the unfortunate events that happened. I'm not going to be specifically at you, but I know that you're directed a lot in several different manners in your capacity, your capacity that you have as an Attorney General. But you're mentioned heavily as the task force, which includes yourself, Assistant Attorney General Chrissy Nemo, the Attorney General's lead prosecutor, Sandy Crosland. The thing is with that is it makes me deeply concerned for our safety of our women and children, because the people who were negligent in their jobs, which is whom I just mentioned, allowed a domestic abuser of women to remain unprosecuted for obvious political reasons. That abuser went on to commit murder of one of our employees. Now, there are major problems with his administration because the chief has allowed too much control to cover up his mistakes. And since I've been on council, I've witnessed cases be swept under the rug, such as a former high school administrator courting an underage student for 3 years before having relationships with her and then employing her as his assistant. It was supposedly investigated, swept under the rug, and no charges were brought. Then we had 5 of our Cherokee children were reporting child abuse at our child care at the Circle. Investigation was supposedly conducted, but once it was swept again, and now the teacher who was abusing the kids is still employed with Cherokee Nation and working for the education department. There are countless other stories of women and children being targeted by high-ranking employees, yet this administration has continued to sweep them under the rug. And this is where it's time for checks and balances to happen. This council must step up to the plate and form its own actual investigation on the administration for its inability to govern our people and keep them safe. We have the state of Texas, we have the state of Kansas, the state of Louisiana, and the state of Nebraska. And now 2 major cities, one of them just mentioned as being the largest population, Owasso, inside of a reservation, have all signed on to end our ability to govern our reservations because they are scared for their own protection. That's the question right there. Why would they do it? I think it's because they are scared at their own protection. This administration has proven to them all that they cannot protect the public. It's unfortunate that the chief would rather go after political oppositions by arresting them during a campaign than go after real threats to the public and file charges and arrest them. Now it's time for us, the council, to start our own domestic abuse task force by creating a committee of counselors to investigate the dysfunction of the administration's handling of McGirt. The first thing we need to do is to call for a formal investigation of the Governmental Health Review Board, which has the final hiring process of the doctor who is well-known a domestic abuser, as it was well documented whenever we start looking at the actual accounts from who he was. We need to look at removing clauses of certain cabinet members, such as the Attorney General herself, for the negligence that is shown in since McGirt and the failures to file domestic abuse charges against certain individuals. So, my fellow councilmen and women, I make a motion that we need to create an Indian Protection Committee. That way we can go and we can start looking at these things, every single one of us. We can start taking an approach of what kind of laws we can create, what policies need to be conducted, and how we can go about moving forward to protect everybody within Cherokee Nation and within our reservation. And that's all I have to say about that. So I'm calling on all you guys to see what we could do moving forward within our council.
I'm sure that Governor Stitt appreciates your skepticism of tribal sovereignty.
It has
and
nothing
the
to do with
ability
Governor
of
Stitt. You can
tribes to
stand down and say,
govern.
point of order,
Point of order, no. Listen
I think we have
up.
Sean
Point of order. Listen to me, Councilman, listen.
Council, I'm calling my
Listen.
council members.
Council, I
I want to
know.
hear from them, not from her. from
You
our
will,
council.
no.
Point of order.
Point of order. I am the chair of this committee.
Yes, you are.
Then you listen.
I am listening.
Then listen, be still and listen. Listen to me. Sir, we're fixing to bring some marshals in and remove you if you cannot
Why
follow
would you do
procedure.
that?
Because
This is
you
not
will
about
not.
me. This is
Listen
supposed
to
to be
me.
about protecting
That's
our
exactly
people.
right. I am the chair of this committee.
Yes, you are.
You
We're all
get,
listening to you.
everybody's going to get a chance to talk, but you will not run this meeting. You
I'm
wait
gonna
your
run this
turn.
meeting. I'm simply
Count-
trying to say that I
Listen
said what I
up.
had to say.
I've about
That's
had
done.
enough. You will be
Good,
removed.
go ahead, you had enough.
I will. Enough. Calm down, have some respect. You show zero respect.
I show respect all the time.
A.G.
This
Hill?
is what I'm
Point
fighting
of
for.
A.G.
order.
Hill?
Oh, point of order.
A.G. Hill, respond.
As I was saying, I'm sure that Governor Stitt appreciates that support for undermining tribal sovereignty, that doubt that Indian tribes can govern themselves effectively, the lack of confidence that shows in the tribal council and the chief and all of the elected leaders and officials of the Cherokee Nation. It's very much buying into what Governor Stitt sells every day, and I think it's a dangerous thing to say.
I had the floor back since we're following.
No, you raise
I
your
did, I
hand
know,
and
I
I'll
had
give
the
you your floor.
I had the floor and I was conducting a conversation with her. So my floor goes back. I seen Counselor Crittenden over
Yes,
here.
absolutely.
And I'd like to move the floor over him so he can continue his
Now,
question.
this is what's going to happen. Councilman Crittenden will have the floor. If you want to say something, you will wait till everybody else who has not responded.
I did. I
Then
had
you will
the
be able
floor,
to.
now I've gave-
Well, then, Councilman, why don't you just have some respect for everybody else? This isn't about you. Councilman Crittenden.
Okay. On a totally different note, I had more of a comment. There was a couple of things that come up in the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted to say I appreciate you answering your phone and, taking time out and helping me kind of see what was going on with these situations, and that was my comment, so thank you.
I'm always happy to answer questions from any of the council members that have them.
Julia? Can you hear me, Julia?
Yeah, I can. I don't condone the outburst that just happened and everything, but on the other hand, I too have to express that I'm disappointed in the Attorney General's response to the questions. If at any time we as counselors make criticisms of our own government, which I regard as part of our job, I regard that as contributing to leading to better and better levels of our exercise of sovereignty. Because we can't sit here and pretend that everything is perfect. We know it's not. The public knows it's not. And it's something that we are charged with doing as tribal counselors, is to levy criticisms when we think they are warranted. And if the threat of Governor Stitt and our remarks undermining tribal sovereignty are going to be pulled out and thrown against us, if we ever, make criticism, then we're being silenced. We're being shut down. And I don't appreciate that type of response. That is an attack in itself, in my estimation. We have a right to be critical of our government. That is one of the foundations of democracy. And these allegations, and I'm not going to give them any more credence than that, but allegations and questions need to be responded to without, these kind of passive-aggressive responses that we are somehow undermining tribal sovereignty and wielding the threat of Governor Stitt and lawsuits against us because we're trying to get to a better place. And so that's all I have to say. It's really nothing about the remarks of Counselor No Fire, their validity or not. These are things I would need to think about, but I really hope that all of us would think about them. But I don't appreciate having threats of undermining tribal sovereignty wielded against any one of us when we have critiques and criticisms to make of our own government. That is our right, and that is an aspect of good government. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Yes, ma'am.
I would only respond by saying, certainly I never infringed upon Mr. No Fire's right to criticize me in any way he wanted to call for my removal, or to say that I was incompetent and generally terrible at my job. He's got every right to say that as a citizen and as a council member. I simply think that it is also fair for me to have an opportunity to respond to allegations like that leveled at me and my office.
Anybody else? Candace?
I want to begin by speaking first about Christine Sharrow Newhoff. She is an attorney with the largest healthcare system in Idaho. It has been expressed that there is a need for objectivity. She is not a Cherokee Nation employee. She is not with Cherokee Nation Health Systems. She is from outside of the Cherokee Nation tribal government. She is not affiliated with any one of the branches of our tribal government. So I do want to make that clear. As the attorney for the largest healthcare system in Idaho, I want to point out that healthcare interfaces with domestic violence daily. And other individuals who I know who are in the healthcare system have talked about the sheer intensity, emotionality, and the emotional toll and trauma that it takes on them as healthcare professionals when they deal with victims of domestic violence, both adult and our youth and our children. Sexual assault nurse examiners are within the health system, and they are absolutely part of the domestic violence system. As to the allegations that have been brought forward and the manner in which they have been brought forth, I am not sure this is the appropriate forum for that. In addition, I would also call for a point of order on the call for a resolution, as it is my understanding that in this committee, resolutions need to be submitted and added to the agenda in the manner in which this body operates. So I do want to clarify that point as well. As for the use of political grandstanding to make points about domestic violence issues, as an individual who is the child of a survivor and as a survivor myself, I find that absolutely abhorrent. And I do not wish to see this body fall so low that we are going to start grandstanding on domestic violence issues. Thank you.
Councilman No.
I'm sorry you felt, sorry first from hearing about your experiences with domestic violence abuse yourself, but it wasn't grandstanding. It was more of trying to point what we are going to do as council members with all that's been brought to our attention, with what had happened, with the sheer magnitude of McGirt, the domestic violence abuse that was gone unnoticed for whatever reason, not been prosecuted. I think that's our responsibility as council members, is to try to correct the wrong. We all seen the wrong. We're not oblivious to it. I mean, if we are, we're being negligent ourselves. So, yes, I'm not 100% sure if creating a committee or subcommittee has to be put on the agenda first. That would be something for our Attorney General, or for our legal to our council to answer. But I do think that whether we could do it today, or maybe we need to move that to another scheduled meeting, I think it's worth definitely us taking a look at and considering creating a Indian Protective Committee to take a look at all the problematic outcomes of McGirt. It would be coming from us as a council. We can always call in the Attorney General. We can always call in our Marshal and ask questions for them. Their experience is just like what they do with their reports. But when they're bringing it to us, we get to go back to our communities and look. We know the problems. We looked around. I done told Marshal Buell that when we drove through Tahlequah of how the homelessness has increased. we can go to our communities and try to come up with educated approaches that's going to fix those problems. That is why it's important for us to take a look at creating that committee. Now, our legal, do you know if we need to have that on the agenda to create a committee, or is that something that this body can just create without it being on the agenda?
In order to give the public notice, it needs to be an agenda item and moved out. That way the public has an opportunity to chime in on the formation of it.
Okay, appreciate that. So that's something, if anybody would want to look at starting some committee or subcommittee, you know, you guys have my phone numbers. I'm all available anytime, and we can get with our legal, and we can do that, and that way we can start hashing out some of the ideas and some of the missteps to prevent from other states signing on, to prevent from other cities signing on, to try to remove our ability to govern ourselves. So, appreciate that.
Is there anybody else? Okay.
I
Councilman
guess I
Legg?
need some clarification if you would. So
Okay.
I did not realize, so we have states that are wanting to govern can I ask that?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, we have, so there was the state of Oklahoma obviously filed it. And then now the state of Texas, Kansas, Louisiana, I don't even know why they're signing on, but apparently it's either leaking over or something's happening for them to sign on. But now you have two major metropolitans signing on as well, being Tulsa, which half of is roughly made up in Cherokee Nation jurisdiction, and then Owasso, which is being the largest city within our jurisdiction. And they're seeing problems due to our governing aspect.
In Nebraska, in Kansas, they're seeing problems.
The only thing I
with
could think
Cherokees.
of is whenever we were talking with Shannon Buell, is the drug activity that's happening here could also be affecting. I mean, you think Texas with the drug border security going on down there, it's possibly the reason why they're trying to chime in as well. Same way with Louisiana being a major port. I'm just thinking it's all
Right.
And that's why I say it's an issue that we all need to be in conjunction with. And as a council, that's what we're here to do.
I asked that just a little bit out of concern, but the second thing about that doctor that killed that old lady, Chief Hoskins was not the one that even hired this doctor. Them guys go through their own HR process, just like any other employee within Cherokee Nation. HR has the ability to discern, and every one of them guys, that doctor's cases were dismissed. Chief Hoskins didn't dismiss some cases, a judge did. Not even judges in this county, it was judges everywhere. Man, and Wes, I love you to death, man, but don't politicize this, man, and make it where it's Chief
Point of order,
Hoskins.
let him finish, who gets a
And I
chance.
love you, man, but don't do that.
Right.
You will be.
No, I wasn't responding directly to, yes, partly of chief, because it is his administration. It is his attorney general. It is his director of health staff. And his director of health staff was part of the hiring review board, in which he did have domestic violence on his record when we hired him. And then we rehired him and continued to rehire his contract while having that on there. And yes, the state did dismiss that, which would have been picked up by our attorney general. And our attorney general should have prosecuted him for domestic abuse.
She would not have seen that.
She would have seen it. They get sent that every day.
Before McGirt.
No, it wasn't. It happened in 2020.
Point of
It was
order.
still a standing
Hey,
case.
let's go one at a
No,
time,
we're
guys.
talking- we
One
can
at a
talk
time.
off- we can talk off
One
record.
at a time.
It's fine. We'll talk off record
Okay,
about it,
that's
too, 'cause
fine.
that's
That'll
continued
work.
conversation with us.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else, Daryl? I'm good. Okay. Candace?
Well, there was a question that was posed by one of the counselors, and I felt since we have our Attorney General here, who clearly has the most legal expertise, I was wondering if she might want to respond to Counselor Legg's question, as there may have been some inaccurate information that was put forth otherwise.
So I think on the briefing situation, that talking about Kansas and Louisiana and these other states, that's not, actually has nothing to do with the city of Tulsa and Owasso. That was the state's brief. So the state of Oklahoma told the Supreme Court that they, that they needed to overturn McGirt, that they needed to get rid of the reservations. And there were other states that were supportive of that brief. So they jumped in and said, yeah, we agree. You should Supreme Court, because McGirt, it doesn't just affect and it doesn't just affirm, tribal reservations. It also can be used as a basis to affirm reservations in other states, right? So there are other tribes that may also look at McGirt and say, this restoration, this might also help my tribe, and we saw that recently with Quapaw. So I think there are other states where there may be states that are concerned that, well, if McGirt can be used to restore and reaffirm tribal authority in Oklahoma, it might also restore and reaffirm reservations in my state. So they may have their own incentives to do that have nothing to do with crime. And so that's, then Owasso and Tulsa filed a separate amicus brief, and then the district attorneys filed their own separate amicus brief.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Attorney General Hill. I appreciate your work, the work of the Office of the AG, and, it's probably best to speak on what we know instead of trying to speculate on things that we don't, as all of our comments are a matter of public record, and at some point could be used against Cherokee Nation in a future forum that we may not be able to predict. So I would argue that every one of us should use caution as we are making statements in these public forums. Thank you.
Keith?
In that same vein, I just want to state that any speculation as to why any other state may want to join Oklahoma in their challenge needs to be clearly stated. That speculation, it's not based on actual knowledge, because when we speak, people actually take it to be based off of sound information, and we shouldn't state speculation as fact.
Anybody else? Sean?
Hey, just for my future reference now, let's say I wanted to add something to the agenda. I could just do it right now, couldn't I? I would like to add this to the agenda, then I'd need a second, right? Or not?
No.
Is that not right? Amend the agenda, yeah.
The speaker can amend it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
See, I'm just going to clear this up, because, you know.
The council member can ask the speaker to allow a motion to amend the agenda, but otherwise, the amendment of the agenda is the discretion of the speaker.
Okay.
Hold on.
All right, I just needed clarity in case I don't want to do that someday. But, and then that, and whether you're for something or against it, I know my opinion, the way I'd vote right now. But, to prolong something, if I could say, hey, I'd like to amend the agenda, I've done it before, then didn't get a second, and we didn't have to worry about it anymore. But just, so you're saying that wasn't the way to go about it, right?
The agenda's been approved coming into the meeting.
Right.
Typically, and certain council codes will have more on this than I would. It has to be raised as a motion, and the speaker has to approve it.
Could you step up to a microphone?
The speaker would need to approve a motion to amend the agenda since it's been approved by this body prior to the commencement of the meeting.
Okay, all right, I appreciate what you do, and I'm sure I just must have done it wrong in the past. Thank you.
Julia?
Counselor Crittenden has not done it wrong in the past. The advice of the council attorney is incorrect. Anyone can make a motion to amend the agenda at any moment during the meeting. It does require a second, and it goes to a vote of the body. It requires a 2/3 vote in order for the agenda the motion to be approved. Thank you.
Anybody else? Candessa?
It may have been my misunderstanding. I didn't realize that Councilor No Fire was seeking to add an agenda item. It sounded as though he was seeking to propose some type of resolution or a or something that was more formal in nature than a simple agenda item. My apologies.
Anybody else? Okay. I guess I'll put in my opinion on all of this. I'm not sure I heard anything that could be considered a fact in any of these allegations. First of all, does anybody really on this council know what happened in that case? Do they know the specifics of that case? Do they know about what this investigation has turned up in that case? How in the world can you make an assumption if you have no idea what happened in a criminal case? How can you do your due diligence? How can you do that? You're just making stuff up. That's all you're doing. So, when I listen to this, what turns out to be, says there's political things going on one side and there's a lot of political spouting going off right in this room. There's a lot of accusations that I see zero truth in. Zero evidence of any of this stuff. So I agree with Candace. We have to watch what we say. When we purport something as fact, that's not. Whenever we take the side of a side that's against the Cherokee Nation, that is trying to deal our sovereignty a blow, that's borderline treason. So, as a council, every one of our votes are the same. No one person trumps anybody on this council. So as you're sitting here listening to this, you got to ask yourself, is what you're hearing really true? Is there any facts to this? Is there any basis to this? And why is this being said? Guys, I'm just saying, I think it has no place if there's no fact. If you can sit here and make up any possible thing that you want to and purport it as truth, that's wrong. And in any way you want to spin it, it's wrong. I don't care. It's wrong. And to purport it out there to the public as a tribal councilman is wrong. And you are not here for the betterment of this nation. You are not here for the betterment of its people. And you
Point
took an
of
oath.
order. Councilor Nofire is mocking you as you're
see him.
speaking.
I see
It is
him.
disrespectful. It is disrespectful to not only you, it's
Point of
disrespectful
order.
to all
Speaker had
of
the
us.
floor. We just argued this. Speaker had the floor. He was
Point of
talking.
order,
Point
I
of
have
order,
the floor,
Councilman.
not you.
No, he did. He was
Point of
speaking.
order, I have the floor, not you. You are mocking as he's speaking. You
Because
spoke.
it's a joke.
Shut your
It's
mouth
it's
and
a
let me
joke.
speak.
Wes,
It's
let
a
him.
joke.
You are
You're
mocking.
You're
All
coming in to protect
Hey,
the speaker. It's a
I
joke.
sat here and listened to you respectfully. We all listened to you respectfully.
Speaker finished.
Listen, both of you listen. We are going to finish this up. Yes, but here's the point. While he sits here doing this, everybody on the council gets to watch this. That's fine. They need to see this. They need to see the motivation on what's behind everything he's doing. So I agree.
Motivation behind everything I'm doing is the fact that you're coming
Point
here
of
and you're
order,
badgering-
Speaker has the
you're
floor.
badgering me
Point of
because
order.
you're getting the
Point of
whole
order,
final say.
Speaker
I didn't
has the
badger
floor.
anybody here,
All right,
man.
here we
Point of
go.
order, Speaker
We're
has the
we're
floor.
going to move on, okay? We're going to move on. Everybody has had their say. And unfortunately, there's going to be some things brought up about the rules of conduct for councilmen and how you treat each other. It's actually, it's written down, so apparently those are going to have to be read. So, Sarah, do you have anything else to say?
I'm done, Speaker.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you coming in. It is what it is.
It's always a pleasure to be before the tribal council, for whom I have the highest regard. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right. Due to the, Councilman, yes?
Would it be out of order if we make a motion to take about a 10-minute break for the council to
Calm down.
calm down and get back to our business at hand?
I think that would be a great idea, but if you want to make that motion, you can, or another thing we might do is we might waive the rest of our reports because of the time and go straight into our business.
I would ask that we still hear from Marcus Beers from the Election Commission.
Okay.
But I would be amenable to waiving
Well,
the
then-
other reports.
That's fine. We just, as long as we're
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, we got 3 o'clock is our, yeah. Yeah, we got 20 minutes. Since Marcus Fears is here, we're going to waive all reports except the report from the Election Commission. And if we can, we need to try to be done around 3, before 3, and we still have some new business. And I understand that there's been some pretty heated arguments today, but we do need to get to those new business items. Julia? Can you hear me?
It's a motion to waive reports except for Marcus Fears. I would second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Danny? All right, Marcus?
Good afternoon. It's good to see you guys. We have currently 75,840 registered voters as of October the 1st, 43,626 in the district, 32,214, as you can see in my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions about that due to the time. If you guys have anything that maybe I can't answer, you guys can always email me or give me a call. We'll take your emails and I'll take it back to the commission.
All right, Candace?
Well, it's good to see you today, Marcus. I feel like I've asked a lot of questions today, but I do have one for you.
Sure.
My question is, in the general and the runoff election, do you have a list or at least a count on how many absentees were rejected in the general and the runoff?
We're working on this report. This was something that was asked previously, and this is a report that we are working on. It's supposed to come in on our next build. We had a preliminary kind of report that would give us like a total. I think in the general, we were less than 300, probably right in the 280 number, and then we were just above 200, I think, on the runoff. But our next build is going to have this broken down where you can see, basically, if it was no notary or no signature or whatever, it's going to be able to tell us these things.
Great, thank you very much. That was going to be my follow-up question, asking whether those would be broken out by reason for rejection, including lack of notary and complete witness statement, late receipt, et cetera. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate the work done by the Election Commission.
Thank you.
Doc?
Marcus, your counsel is here, Election Commission counsel is here to discuss that Title 26, Section 78A today.
He's here. He asked if you need to ask any questions with the old business that is coming up on the agenda. He's available for answering any of that. We're here to answer that now, or if you want to wait until that item comes up, we can answer some questions there.
I'll leave that up to you, Chair.
Okay.
Thank
Julia?
You.
Thank you. Mr. Fears, you and I had some interactions in trying to help a constituent. I'm sure you'll recall who had lost their ballot had been lost in the mail.
Correct.
And getting her a replacement ballot. And it was at that time that it came to my attention, at least, that we have other forms that require a notary, or that the Election Commission has other forms that require a notary, one of them being a request for a replacement ballot. Are there other forms, in addition to that the Election Commission routinely uses that also require a notary that you can think of off the top of your head? I know I haven't asked you this in
Just
advance,
off the top of my head, there's another form, incapacitated voter. That is not something that the voter needs a notary. I believe the doctor needs to notarize that. But as far as what the voter would need a notary for, I believe it's just the second request.
Okay, just that one form then, huh?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else? Keith?
I notice on your very last thing on your report says the Election Commission is ready to work alongside the Tribal Council on election reform. Has the commission itself already been working on gathering the things that they believe need to be addressed in a current round of election reform?
We have not this round. We still have some items from last time. We have taken diligent notes throughout this past election cycle on some things. We have not sit down as a commission and approved, say, these are our items we would like to look at this time. We still are wanting to have some policy meetings about those items.
And would you anticipate when you would have that information available?
I do not know at this time. What I can do is I can get back with the commissioners and see about when they think that we'll have something available to you guys.
Thank you.
I know that we are looking at the item that is on as an old business. Getting things in on a timely manner is very important, and especially if, based off what come up in rules last time, if we try to bump that back 90, instead of December having our rules and regulations 90 days prior to filing, if we tried to bump that back 90 days prior to our December date, which is pretty much when the election starts, so that's whenever you can start taking money, 60 days prior to the election, then we realize that we need to have this ball start rolling now, while it's fresh.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, as far as what's coming up in old business, is this something that you guys are wanting to meet with? Would it be beneficial to meet and discuss and try to put everything together like our council attorney said? And is that something that you guys that you would show up to a meeting with Dr. Dobbins, with Julia and some others, that Condesa, who would want to be there to talk about what didn't happen and why?
Yes.
I mean, we're really kind of short on time, and I want to give it what it's due. But there's some specific questions that need to be asked too. Doc, I know you have some, and Julia, I know you have some too. So you might think about that as it comes up, Doc. But it may be good to table that and come together and meet and discuss that and go from there. Okay. All right. Thank you, Marcus.
Yes.
Okay, since we waived all the other reports, that brings us to old business. Doc, you want to take that or address that?
Yes, this is an act amending Title 26, Section 11C of the Cherokee Nation Code, annotated to require the Cherokee Nation Election Commission to amend their rules, regulations, and forms upon passage of legislation by the council. I put that in the form of a motion.
Second.
And Counselor Coates would be the best to add to what exactly the verbiage of this act here.
Councilman Coates?
Thank you. I would move forward with this because this has nothing to do with this is a small item, and it doesn't have, it's not related to the item that was withdrawn last time and that you were speaking of just now, Speaker Shambaugh. We got off track last month when this was being discussed because I think there were some confusions and some misunderstandings about it. I will assert once again that this is a housekeeping issue. It is a small thing. We are not trying to change major sections of the election code or anything like that. All of the parts in this, and let me pull it up here, that are at Section 5, where it refers to substantive provisions, it refers to Section 11C7 in the existing election code. Everything in black is already part of the law. The amendment that has been made, or the change that has been made since last month, is to refer to a different section, not Section 78, which was previously referenced as we were hearing from Mr. Fears, but going to Section 11, C7, which references the 90 days that people were concerned about last month. So it is bringing in that 90-day timeline instead, and that is the only substantive change that has been made here, is to simply reference a different part of the law that is already existing. The only change that is being proposed here, the only amendment, is the one sentence that is in red at the bottom of this, which is simply directing that if legislation has been changed by the tribal council, that all forms and policies that are related to that change should also be changed to reflect the original, or the change that has been made. And I just questioned Mr. Fears as to why that is, because we ran into a situation where it was actually more difficult for a citizen to request a replacement ballot than it was to vote the actual ballot itself, because that form that was related had not been changed. So this is all this is doing. It's a housekeeping issue. It's basically about forms, and any related policies to legislative changes must be changed to reflect the intent, the spirit of the law, that is, so that they conform with the change that this body, this tribal council, has made. Okay?
Is there any more?
That's all it is.
Is there any more discussion?
It's not some-
Any more
it's not
discussion?
some-
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. Go ahead. Your lapse is just a little slow when you talk. Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you. I would ask that we go ahead and pass this. It's a small change. It's not related to the larger substantive discussion that, of what happened here. The 90-day time frame that was being requested last month is included here, or it was already in the law, and we're now referencing the correct portion of the law. So I really think we just need to go ahead. This is a simple enough thing to do. It brings it to the attention of the Election Commission, that these things need to be done. Thank you.
Is there any more discussion? Doc?
Yeah. This amendment only charges the Election Commission for consistency to not just require a notary, but a witness on all their forms. The election reform was passed, and then this subsequent legislation was passed that made the notary an option, but then offered the option of a witness to our absentee ballots. I didn't agree with it. I like the notary requirement, but that's beside the point. But I support this because now that we've done that, all this does is make for consistency. All the other forms just have to require a witness if that's so chosen.
Or notary.
Or notary.
Okay.
So that's all this does. It doesn't upend anything. It just, for consistency for their other forms, that they just require a notary or a witness. That's all this does.
Condessa?
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, sir.
I would argue that this is not quite as simple as being presented. In Section 5, the presence of a notary or the presence of a witness is included there, but it is only mentioned as applying to the affidavit envelope itself. So therefore, I would contend that the current legislation as it stands is not going to accomplish what you want. That's what I would contend. I think that if we're having a disagreement over whether or not this is going to be the case, it may require some legal opinion. And I would ask to table it in deference to the other interests that we are seeking to rectify in the smaller meeting in between now and maybe our next meeting.
So you made a motion to table
Well,
indefinite?
no, there's a motion on the table for a vote So I think we're in discussion right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not making the motion.
Okay.
I'm suggesting that as a potential course of action.
Okay. Julia?
That's a total misreading. I'm sorry, Counselor Teehee, but it's a total misrepresentation of the intent of this. It is simple. It is trying to change one freaking form. That's it. If you all want to vote it down, fine. You know, I don't care. I'm past caring at this point. Thank you.
Okay.
My suggestion would be, instead of to propose a separate resolution, to include that simple sentence that you're asking for as a revision in that substantive provision in Section 5A. I think that's where it belongs, personally.
That's exactly what this is doing. That's exactly what this is doing. And this is how it's done. Unless you want to haul out the whole 35-page law, you know, which we can do, but this achieves the same thing, and it doesn't achieve anything in addition. This is just one of the ways to do it. That's all it is.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a second. Any more discussion? All right. All in favor of this act, number 1 in old business, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Aye. Passes. All right. Under new business, EO, would you take that?
Yes, sir. This is a resolution confirming the reappointment of James Simmons as Commissioner of the Housing Authority, the Cherokee Nation Board of Commissioners. I put this in form of a motion, and Mr. Simmons is here today.
A second, I'd like to be added as a sponsor, Shelley.
I'd also like to be added as a sponsor, please.
Everybody? All, Shelley? Yes, I believe so. Does anybody not want to be a sponsor to this? I guess we should say. Okay, that's everybody. All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, let's bring Mr. Simmons in. Mr. Simmons? I'd like to say congratulations, sir. Would you like to say a few words?
Well, Mr. Speaker, Council, I'm here today to ask for another reappointment for a term on the Housing Authority Board. I really enjoy that. I enjoy the fact that I'm helping Cherokee citizens into new homes, and I'll do my best to serve you the best way I know how. So if there's anything that we need to do, I know there's some of the members here that come to our meetings, and I think that's a positive. We really enjoy having the council members there with our meetings. So that's about all I've got to say. I thank you for the vote, and I'll continue to do as good a job as I know how.
Well, sir, we appreciate your service to the Cherokee Nation. All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Under new business, item number 2, Victoria, would you read that?
Sure. This is discussion and possible action regarding an ethical conflict of interest in tribal council member participation in Cherokee Nation businesses, CNB, and Cherokee Nation Gaming Commission, CNGC advisory boards. Put that in the form of a motion.
Second. I have a motion. I have a second. Discussion? Wes?
Yeah, what are we discussing here? It just says this is a discussion on possible action, so what's going on?
She just read what we're discussing.
Yeah, okay, so now we've got it on, we're just discussing, we're in discussion point.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so what's going on here? There's a conflict of interest of something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's happening? Please elaborate.
Well, you have, actually, Councilman, you have a comment to make. If you want to wait, if you don't know what it's about until everybody talks, then you can talk.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right. Anybody else? John Young, our attorney, could you give your opinion on whether there is a conflict on whether somebody serves simultaneously on the CMB board as well as the Gaming Commission board?
The issue is whether or not there's a conflict when a tribal council member serves on both advisory boards for the Gaming Commission and CMB. I think the easiest way to understand it is if a Cherokee citizen were to come forward for appointment to one of these boards, it would be very apparent that it's unethical to appoint them to both. Because one of the boards oversees the other, and there's proprietary information that's for both that carries a lot of responsibility, there's too high of a risk of abuse to having the mix of personnel on both. So it's a clear conflict to have a member of the advisory board serve on both boards for the Cherokee Nation businesses and Cherokee Nation Gaming Commission. It's my understanding they're two overlapping.
Yes. All right, Condessa?
Oh, that was going to be my question. In how many instances is this, is there a potential for conflict that's occurring? But our attorney, Counselor Young, said that there are two.
All right. Wes, you have something?
There's an actual Attorney General opinion out, I don't have it right in front of me, that where any sitting council member can sit on any advisory board, or sit on any board at any single time, whether it's you're actually self-appointing yourself to an advisory board, or you just show up to the meetings. So if you had a council member who was already on the advisory board of the Gaming Commission, for instance, and then they show up to the Cherokee Nation Business Board meeting, they have that inherent right to do so. They're not a citizen, they're elected official. The other thing I want to bring forward on it is that neither one of those are paid positions, and neither one of those have voting abilities. So therefore, it'd be very difficult. I understand what he's bringing forward. It is a good thing and a good question to ask, but kind of just to bring that up as why it wouldn't be a conflict of interest is because we already have an Attorney General's opinion out there about council members sitting on those boards, and then also the fact that they don't vote nor do they get paid. So appreciate it.
Okay. Anybody else? Keith?
As advisory council, you do have full voice. You do have influence. And only those who are, all council people are welcome at any of the meetings as long as there's not a quorum. But if there is a quorum, only those who have been, who actually have the official designation as advisory council could remain in the room once we reach that threat of a quorum. So there is certain things that only those who have been gone through the process have available. And so there is a difference.
Okay. Julia?
Thank you. I'm just, I'm trying to understand one remark that Mr. Young made about the problem being that one board oversees the other. I understand that, but something about proprietary information that is passing too much, or can you elaborate, help me to understand that a little bit better, what you meant by that remark?
Employees of CMB and CNE, by virtue of their employment, often hold gaming licenses. Those gaming licenses are under the purview of the Gaming Commission. There's often a dispute as to how to interpret the Gaming Act, especially with respect to licensing. When you have somebody serving in a role as both, they have a broad role as an advisor on the CMB board and the Gaming Commission, there's a potential for conflict. Likewise, the Gaming Commission receives an enormous amount of confidential information that's held pretty closely. That information is part of it, well, all of it, I should say, is to be kept private. You run into a potential conflict when you have somebody that sits on both the CMB board and the Gaming Commission board, and they're getting access to it for different purposes in different contexts.
Okay, so as a follow-up, I understand that in terms of board members who are, as Councilor No Fire pointed out, who are paid and, voting on these matters. I'm not quite following why that, follows to advisory board members either, especially when they are members of the tribal council, because we handle proprietary information all the time, and I think presumably we would have access to all of that by a simple GRA request anyway. And so I guess, and we have sworn an oath, and we would be in direct violation of our oath, and there would be penalties associated with that. So I guess that's just why I'm wondering what the conflict is, if it's beyond just, having proprietary information from different boards and commissions of the Cherokee Nation, because we have all of that. We have access to all of that anyway. So, okay, that's all. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Kidwell?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would, or Chair, so yeah, but I would say that no matter what we decide here, that this has got to be codified in our bylaws or somewhere else, because we're not, this is the first time this has come up. So now we're debating on, which committee or which advisory boards people can be on, and we've been, this body has been placing people on advisory boards for years and years. So no matter what we decide, I am one of those people who are on both. It happened back whenever we made selections. I understand both trains of thought as it comes to whether we should or shouldn't. Mr. Young's opinion aside, and I respect his opinion, and I think that's worthy. But no matter which way we go, we have to get this in writing, right? There's got to be some type of policy document that tells us what people can and can't be on. And the fact that we don't have anything to point to right now tells me that we're a little bit behind the times, when in actuality, this should be pretty simple for us, right? So no matter which way we go on this one, and I can understand both sides of thought, we have got to get this in writing and get it in our bylaws. That's it, Mr. Speaker.
Anybody else? Well, I'll just say this, that, I have no idea if it's came up in the past or not. It was my first time to chair one of those type of meetings. It's the first time I've been involved in that type of situation, and I don't know if you others have been in that situation. But whenever there is a time when we come up against something that we haven't dealt with before, then I think that's important. That's when we lean on our counsel, and that's why we have our counsel to guide us in those times, that if there's something we haven't had to address personally, or we don't have personal knowledge about. So that's his job. That's just my 2 cents.
As a procedural matter, that's why this will have to go to a vote of the council. It's not
Sure.
codified or otherwise laid out, so it has to go to a vote.
And our next order of business is to vote on that, determined by this council whether there is a conflict or not. So discussion's over, so we'll now move to a vote. All in favor of agreeing that there is a conflict of interest, respond by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Aye. Okay.
I'm abstaining.
I will abstain. I'm on both boards.
Sure. Okay. All right. Motion carries. All right. Next, we need to take nominations to fill those 2 seats on CMB. Keith?
I'd like to nominate Danny Callison for CMB
I have a,
Should it be the purview of the 2 individuals on which board
No.
they go with?
No.
why can it not
No.
be? It was self-appointed to begin with.
Well, that's the whole point. They
So if
were
it's self-appointed, it'll be
but-
back to self-appointed anyways. It's not a
Well, I
nomination.
think I still have the floor. So my rationale in proposing to allow the 2 members to choose whether they're going to go with Gaming Commission or CMB, I would just see that as a matter of respect, because this wasn't an issue that was brought up prior to their appointment, and we don't know which board they might have chosen.
Are you through? Yes. Okay. Well, in looking at that, at any time during this proceeding, either one of the people who are on these boards could have said, hey, I will resign from this so I can be with this. And at no time did they do that. So, that being said, I'll give you your time. That being said, it has come to the point now where we are taking motions for that. If somebody would have came up and said that I don't want to be on CMB, I'll resign my CM board, then that puts me alone on, and that resolves that conflict, we wouldn't have had to go through any of this. It could have ended there early on. We wouldn't have had to go through all these steps. But since we have went through all these steps and this council has found that there is a conflict, then yes, this is how I, as the chair of this committee, have decided to choose to let the council decide who gets to stay on these boards, since nobody said they wanted off either one of them to resolve the conflict. All right, go
I
ahead.
appeal the decision of the chair.
Julia had her hand raised up here.
Go ahead, Julia.
I appeal the decision of the chair. We only just took a vote literally 60 seconds ago. I don't think the people have been given time to potentially resign.
They had a chance to resign when they read this. When this whole process was going on, they had, ma'am, don't interrupt me. I'll give you the floor.
Speaker, hang
I'll
on.
give you the
This is
floor,
one of our
Julia. Just
counselors
wait
that
a
has the
minute.
floor right now. She's speaking. Don't interrupt her.
Oh. I've already
That's
said,
what happens whenever you
my.
treat 'em that way.
Wes, calm down. Do we need to take another break so you can calm down? My goodness. Candace.
I would also join Counselor Coates' appeal as well. I just feel if we are able to give the two counselors the opportunity to say, I'd like to resign this position at this point, then they could ultimately resolve the conflict. I understand that. I understand the feeling that this should have been resolved prior to it coming to this particular juncture, but I do join Counselor Coates' appeal.
Got anything? Keith?
I've made a motion.
I know.
It's on the floor. It needs to be seconded or removed. I've not asked to remove it yet. So it needs to either be second. If nobody seconds it, that's fine, but it's not.
Second. I'll second it.
It's actually, it was already seconded. Doris seconded it.
I have a question. Right now, there's not an empty seat for Danny to go into. That has to be resolved before Danny can go into an empty seat.
Actually, no, because we are voting on two people to go on CMB and board, and next we will vote on two people going to the gaming commission.
Johnny and I are still sitting on those. We haven't been removed from those boards. Even though it was said it was a conflict, we still are currently sitting on that. We would have to remove ourselves, and then someone could self-nominate themselves. It's not a nomination by a fellow council member. It's just self-appointed. Just like Danny's wanting to, I get that. We can get there. It's just following the proper procedures. So I will take the motion and step down from C&B board, since this is a big issue when it shouldn't be. And I'm assuming Danny's going to want to sit there and take that position. I'll stay on as C&B advisory board to the gaming side. And then that way, you know, hey, I'll still go up to C&B meetings, and if there's not a quorum, I'll sit in it as well. There's nothing there.
No. Go ahead, Danny.
Just for the council's purpose, I'm not on any board. I didn't get on any, I'm an alternate, is the only thing I'm on, because of the process that we went through 2 months ago. So I will do whatever I can to help out the board, to help out the council, and to do whatever I can. So with that said, you know, this is not a campaign, this is not for me to get anywhere else, other than I will do what I need to do to help the council.
So. Yes, one at a time. Everybody will be voted on one at a time. Yes.
Can I have clarification, please?
All right. So we have, what was your, Condessa, what was your,
Didn't Wes just say he was going to resign from C&B and stay on gaming?
Wes no longer has
That's what I
that
just
option
said.
to do that. We have a motion on the floor to, he can resign from CMB,
That
yes.
created the position for him to sit on that. Otherwise, there's no position
Well,
because they're
we're-
filled. That's what Danny just said. They were
Well,
filled, and I know he
that's-
was an
that is-
alternate.
Actually, that's not true. That is not true.
Everything you said's not been true today. You've been saying everything I've said's not been true. That's been your opinion, everything. I'm trying to make it easier I
I'll
separated
accept
myself from that position so that way Danny could step in there. He knows it's self-appointed because it was self-appointed last time. That's why he didn't get on anything, is because we all took it. I was the first one to raise my hand on all those, but I'll step down to make the proper process.
I
for him to
will
that
accept your
position.
resignation from CMB board. So the council accepts his resignation from CMB board. However, that does not change the fact that there is a motion on the floor and a nomination on the floor. And a second. Doesn't change the process. Like I said, if this would have happened earlier, sure. If this would have happened earlier, then we would never have been to where we're at right now.
There's no reason. If anything happened earlier, we were trying to discuss whether it was a conflict. That was the whole point of it. Then we removed the board positions, which I've already stepped down to do. Now we're filling one of the positions right now. It's the actual proper process of how we're doing it.
Actually, it's not. I've talked to our council attorney on the proper
I'm not gonna
process,
argue
and
with
this
you
is
on
how
the
we're going to
proper
do it.
process. It's done. Let's
Okay.
come on, let's go forward with it.
All right, did you have you had a nomination?
I already made it.
Yes, and who was it?
Danny Callison.
Okay, and it was seconded? Okay. Danny Callison has been nominated for advisory member for CMB. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. Do I have another nomination for the other advisory board position for CMB?
He would have to
That's
resign.
it.
Someone would have to resign
Yeah.
first. There's no position to
You
fill.
Mr. Chair, I would like to resign from the Gaming Commission Advisory.
Okay. We'll accept your resignation. However, there still is a motion to fill the business side. CMB. Well, you didn't make that motion?
There was one motion on. There's no motions on the floor right now. The one motion that was on the floor.
So he resigned before we had a motion? Because I asked for a motion.
The motion that's on the floor has been passed.
Right.
The only motion that was on the floor was Keith's motion to put Callison on CMB. It was
Right.
seconded by Dora. It passed. Now there are no motions on the floor. Counselor Kidwell resigned his position.
And we accepted that.
On gaming.
I understand
So now
that.
there's a spot open on gaming.
Well, okay. So we have one spot on gaming left.
Right.
Okay. I need a motion to fill that spot on gaming. Victoria?
I'd like to nominate E.O. Smith.
Okay. We have a motion and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Whew. All right. Is there any announcements? Yeah. All right, the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, November 16th at 10 a.m. Need a motion for adjourn. Second? Yes? Hold up. I just read it. I said the next meeting is tentatively scheduled for, there's one other thing that we are going to have to come up with, too. And that's our meetings for next month. November. Where the heck's it at? Yeah. Well, I don't know. We haven't had it set yet. What we'll probably do is poll the council. We will not do it during this meeting. We will do it after, and to see when it's best for everybody. We'll do it that way.
I can poll by email.
Because we have your options are 1 day or 2. So we'll see what the council wants to do.
I can poll by email next week if you want me to.
Okay. Shelley will poll you by email next week. All right, we have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? This meeting's over. Do what?
Go ahead.